I bet you've always wanted to know how you can make a good first impression. Walk into a room and be truly noticed in a positive way. People look at you and say, "Amazing guy. I want to talk to this person. I want to connect with this person." And you haven't even said a word. It's an advanced level. It's a whole other level of charisma and presence. It's not for everyone, and some people won't be able to reach that level because of some social mistakes you still make. Mistakes that can ruin your presence, your charisma, and make you less attractive. Imagine this scenario. There's a type of man who walks into a room and no one notices. He's there, standing, his posture slightly hunched over, his eyes averted, his expression trying to appear neutral. No one hates him, but no one desires him. He doesn't bother, but he doesn't instigate either. And that's precisely the problem. He lives in a state of social neutrality so comfortable that he becomes invisible. Just 3% of men ever unlock this, and once they do, their entire reality shifts. The Forbidden Manual reveals how to trigger desire in just 60 seconds. And when you get it, you'll instantly receive 3 secret ebooks, free. Tools to sharpen your mind, your control, and your power. Tap the link in the pinned comment. And what he doesn't realize, what almost no one realizes, is that this invisibility is no accident. It's constructed, nurtured, sustained by tiny mistakes, almost imperceptible, but profoundly destructive habits. Meanwhile, in another corner of the same room, another man arrives. He's not the handsomest, nor the tallest, nor the funniest, but he walks as if he knows where he is. He doesn't need to shout, he doesn't need to force a smile. There's something about his presence that disturbs, that invites, that dominates. People observe him even if he hasn't yet said a word. He fills the space. And the curious thing, he's learned this. He wasn't born with that something extra. He built it. Because he understood something the former still ignores. The social game isn't about being accepted. It's about being felt. What most people do is try to be likable. They smile before the joke. They talk more than they should. They fear silence, as if the emptiness reveals their insecurities. And it's precisely in this fear that charisma dies. You think you're being friendly, you're being approachable, but in the eyes of others you're just sending a desperate message. Please validate me. This silent obsession with acceptance has deep roots. Evolutionary psychology has shown that, for our ancestors, being excluded from a group could mean death. Therefore, there's a primitive instinct that makes us strive for acceptance at any cost. But the world has changed, and so have social codes. Today, those who strive the hardest to be accepted are the first to be ignored. And those who know how to strategically withhold attention are the ones who reap respect, desire, and influence. But what's preventing most men, perhaps you, from reaching this state of social magnetism is a set of invisible mistakes. Mistakes that don't seem like mistakes. Behaviors that at first glance seem harmless until you realize they're silently sabotaging your presence, your perceived value, and your ability to make an impact. And that's exactly why this video is a game changer. Because today I'm not going to show you how to be nice, or friendly. Honestly, the world is already full of those. I'm going to show you the 3 social mistakes that destroy your charisma, weaken your energy, and dull your presence, even when you think you're doing everything right. And most importantly, I'll show you how to reverse them. I'm going to introduce you to a concept I created called the presence that begs for approval. Understand it this way. You don't have to say anything to be rejected. In fact, most rejections begin before the first word. They arise in the look that avoids contact, in the hunched posture that tries to disappear, in the unmotivated smile that betrays neediness, in the anticipatory laugh that begs for acceptance. And here's the shock. The world doesn't judge what you say. It feels what you convey. And the first fatal mistake that destroys your presence is precisely this: the desperate attempt to be validated before even being known. People who beg for approval don't seem needy at first glance. They seem like nice people. They're approachable, friendly, talk to everyone, laugh at anything. They occupy space with words, jokes, and an eager enthusiasm that masks something deeper, the dread of being perceived as uninteresting. So they talk, and talk, and talk, because they believe, mistakenly, that the more space they occupy with words, the more valuable they become. But the effect is the opposite. When you talk too much, when you anticipate every silence, you're not communicating presence. You're confessing fear. Fear of being forgotten, fear of not being interesting, fear of not being enough. And what does fear do? It leaks. It reveals itself in the speed of speech, in the nervous tone of voice, in the off-key laugh. It reveals itself in the absence of pause. Because those who lack the courage to sustain silence also lack the courage to sustain tension. And if you don't sustain tension, you don't sustain desire. The human brain doesn't desire what it already has. It desires what is up for grabs, what hasn't yet been conquered, what defies its predictability. And there's nothing more predictable than someone desperate to be accepted. The tragedy here is that many think they're being charismatic, but they're actually burning social value with every attempt to appear too nice. You've seen it happen. That guy who walks in cracking jokes, laughing loudly, trying to make everyone feel comfortable. Deep down, he believes he's commanding the room. But the truth is, he's bowing to it. Because true command isn't in the sound, it's in the pause. Watch the men who walk into a room and effortlessly dominate the space. They talk less, they listen more. When they speak with rhythm, with pauses, with intonation. They're in no rush to be understood. They're not in a rush to prove their worth. Because they know, viz., that well-placed silence says more about power than 1,000 nervous words. This is where psychology comes in. In a classic Harvard University experiment, researchers analyzed the communication patterns of natural leaders. The result? The most respected leaders spoke less than average, but when they did speak, they used strategic pauses and language with high emotional impact. This activated a perception of authority and magnetism in the group. What's more, the same researchers found that people who talk too much in social settings, mainly to avoid silence, are interpreted as less confident, less trustworthy, and surprisingly, less attractive. Why? Because excessive talk communicates emotional instability, as if you need to constantly justify yourself for being there. What few understand is that silence isn't absence. It's condensed presence. It's concentrated energy. It's confidence distilled into seconds of sustained tension. Great seducers use silence as a tool of seduction. Don Draper, for example, in Mad Men, didn't seduce with words. He seduced with what wasn't said, with what he left hanging. He made people chase the subtext, not the text. And this isn't fiction, it's pure social technique. The same logic applies to figures like Richard Gere in Pretty Woman, or even Ryan Gosling in Drive. They say little, but everything they do conveys dominance, comfort, and intention. They don't try to fill the room. They are the room. But why is it so difficult to sustain this in practice? Because it requires something most people don't have: peace with their own worth. Only those who believe they don't need to prove anything maintain silence. And this is the blind spot of most. They want to learn to be seductive, but they don't have the courage to face the discomfort of simply existing without justifying themselves. The roots of this are deep. From childhood, we are rewarded for being good, helpful, and pleasant. We learn that love comes as a reward for good behavior. And we carry this into social life. We believe that if we are pleasant enough, we will finally be recognized. But the game doesn't work that way. The world doesn't reward the pleasant. It rewards the unforgettable. And no one remembers the one who is trying to please. Everyone remembers the one who had the courage to be different, even at the risk of being misunderstood. That's why silence is so powerful. It's a testament to self-control. It's a silent affirmation that you don't need to fill space to be valuable, that you don't need to speak to be heard, that you don't need approval to be felt. But how do you practice this? Simple. Try the tense silence challenge. The next time you're in a conversation, resist the temptation to interrupt the silence. Let it grow for 2 seconds. 3. 4. And only speak when your body is relaxed enough to hold that silence without fear. When you speak, choose your words with intention, with weight, with rhythm. Make each sentence a precise cut, not a nervous noise. You'll notice something magical. People start to lean in. They start to pay more attention. They start to feel that what you say has depth. Why? Because now they're no longer being forced to listen to you. They're curious to find out what you're going to say. And if you want to go deeper, go beyond speech. Work on your breathing. Breathing is the first mirror of anxiety. If you breathe quickly, you convey haste, and haste is a cousin of insecurity. Now, if you take a deep, slow breath and hold your gaze, you're telling the room, I belong here. And you know what's even more paradoxical? The less you try to be accepted, the more accepted you'll be. Because social magnetism isn't born of effort, it's born of inner mastery. And this mastery begins when you stop trying to be noticed and start being remembered. This is precisely where the transition to the next mistake lies. Because if this first behavior, talking too much, trying to please, not being silent, reveals insecurity, the second mistake is even more destructive. It doesn't just show insecurity, it shows emptiness. Okay, now I'm going to build an extra layer of knowledge in your mind. Some men think they're being rejected because of shyness. Others believe the problem is physical, lack of beauty, height, aesthetics. But there's a deeper, quieter layer that drives people away even before any conscious judgment, the void of personal value. The absence of a story, of an inner flame, of something that makes the other person feel like they're in the presence of someone unique. Because what attracts, what connects, what makes an impression, has never been physical. It has been, and always will be, the emotional and symbolic content you represent to the other person. And the biggest social error that almost no one realizes is exactly this. Thinking presence is enough. That being in a setting, well-dressed, polite, friendly, will automatically generate connection. It won't. Most men enter interactions with the secret hope that just by being nice, they'll be recognized as special. But the brutal truth is that friendliness without substance is like perfume without memory. It smells good, but disappears in minutes. Here's the bottom line. You can't generate a deep connection with anyone if you don't have depth yourself. This may sound harsh, but it's liberating. Because by understanding this, you begin to work on what really matters. Becoming someone who carries history, intensity, opinion, and a worldview. And that can't be bought, it can be built. Carl Jung said that one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by becoming conscious of the inner darkness. And this phrase carries a weight that few understand. The man who truly seduces is not the one who hides his shadows. He is the one who has confronted them and transformed them into narrative, into emotional maturity, into existential authority. He doesn't need to explain himself because he exudes truth. He doesn't need to convince because he conveys experience. See, when you talk to someone who truly has personal value, you feel it. It's different. It's not about cliches or forced charisma. It's about presence with depth. It's about someone who has lived, who has processed, who has learned, and who now speaks from an inner place that you respect even without understanding why. He's the silent mentor. He's the man who doesn't compete, doesn't show off, but everyone listens when he speaks. Because every sentence he says carries the "I lived it." And there's no shortcut. There's only a journey. This is the problem with many men today. They have nothing that makes them unique. They consume the same content, watch the same videos, say the same phrases, and repeat the same recycled ideas. They are copies of copies of copies trying to appear authentic. And the worst part? When they realize they don't stand out, they try to compensate with artificial status, expensive clothes, rehearsed phrases, forced attitudes. But what's missing isn't external. It's the absence of real symbolic value. But how do you build this value? The first answer is simple. You need narrative. People connect not with data, but with stories. Not with facts, but with emotions. When you share real experiences, worldviews, and internal dilemmas, and do it authentically, you activate one of the most powerful mechanisms in social psychology: emotional mirroring. This is the phenomenon where the other person sees themselves in you, in your story, in your journey. And the more you allow the other person to see themselves in you, the more intimate and profound the connection becomes. This is how what I call narrative value is built. And this value is irresistible. Because now you're not just another nice guy. You are a universe of experiences, meanings, and truths that resonate with the other person's journey. You become unforgettable, not because you try hard, but because you resonate. This is where the power of the trinity of magnetic topics comes in. It's a simple but brutally effective technique. Every high-value man has 3 pillars that define his social presence. These are 3 topics: 3 passions that when he talks about, his eyes sparkle, his voice gains rhythm, and his posture expands. It could be philosophy, art, entrepreneurship, spirituality, martial arts. It doesn't matter. What matters is that these topics define your identity. And when you share these pillars intensely, you automatically differentiate yourself from the lukewarm crowd. Trevor Noah is a living example of this. The South African comedian isn't just known for making jokes. He's remembered for transforming his story, marked by apartheid, poverty, and exclusion, into a source of global connection. He turned his own life into a magnetic narrative. And that's the secret, turning your biography into a bridge of connection. But here's the trap. Many think they need to have an extraordinary life to achieve this. They don't. They just need to live consciously. Reflect, learn, share. Because even the simplest stories, a conversation with your grandfather, a lesson in jiu-jitsu training, a moment of failure at work, can become powerful emotional material if you know how to tell them with truth and purpose. Joseph Campbell, author of The Theory of the Monomyth, or Hero's Journey, showed that all the most impactful stories follow a pattern: a calling, a challenge, a transformation, and a return. And if you look closely, this is the structure of every well-lived life. The problem is that many live without awareness of their own script. They're so focused on being accepted that they forget to experience something worth telling. And those who don't leave a mark. That's why, when you talk to someone who has personal value, you feel small, but inspired. Not because they diminish you, but because they reveal how much you can still grow. He doesn't need to impress, he just is. And this naturalness has a power that no seduction technique can replicate. But be careful. Personal value isn't arrogance. It's not placing yourself above others. It's having something so solid within you that you no longer need to compete. You share, you teach, you provoke, you inspire. And that's what makes you magnetic. If you want to start today, do a simple exercise. List the 3 topics that most ignite your mind. Not the trendy ones, but the ones you could talk about for hours, even without an audience. Now, ask yourself, when was the last time you truly delved into these topics? When was the last time you shared something about them with enthusiasm? And most importantly, how do these topics reveal who you are? After that, look for real stories from your life that contain these 3 structures: conflict, learning, transformation. It could be a romantic crisis, a bankruptcy, a moment of physical overcoming. What matters is that you transform your experience into an emotional narrative and tell it calmly, intensely, and without the slightest intention of impressing, only with the desire to convey something true. This is the beginning of building personal value. And here's the consequence. When you have this, the social game changes completely. Conversations deepen, looks linger, invitations appear. Because now you're no longer there just to be accepted. You're there to make an impact, to offer something most don't, presence with purpose. But here comes the twist. Because even after achieving personal value, many still fall into one final error. They build presence, master silence, have substance, but they fail in something essential. They don't generate tension. They become interesting, but they don't become desirable. They are heard, but they aren't remembered with desire. I'll introduce you to another concept. Have you ever stopped to realize that the most desirable people are rarely the nicest? That the characters who spark the most fascination in movies or in life are precisely those who walk the edge, between magnetism and menace, between charm and danger, between kindness and audacity? This is no coincidence. This is tension. And tension is the secret ingredient that separates the charismatic from the irresistible. It's what transforms admiration into desire. It's what makes an impression. It's what hypnotizes. And the absence of it is the most fatal mistake anyone can make socially. Social tension is the invisible thread that connects 2 people in an undeclared game of mutual influence. It's the energetic field that's created when you don't give everything right away. When you hold someone's gaze for half a second longer than is comfortable. When you challenge an idea instead of simply agreeing. When you flirt with the edge of disagreement, but do so with elegance. The world teaches us to be pleasant, diplomatic, and straightforward. But desire doesn't live linearly. Desire lives in tension. Robert Greene explains this masterfully in The Art of Seduction when he talks about the importance of creating emotional friction. He shows that great seducers never seek to please all the time. They dance between yes and no, between presence and absence, between compliment and subtle provocation. And this game isn't manipulation, it's advanced social art. Because where there's no tension, there's boredom. And boredom is the greatest killer of human interest. People who avoid tension are generally those who grew up afraid of making mistakes, afraid of being judged. They seek approval above all else, and to achieve this, they sacrifice their own authenticity. They adapt to the environment, erase their rough edges, swallow their opinions, and with that, they eliminate any trace of intensity. They are the ones who never disagree, never provoke, never surprise. They are predictable. They are safe. And precisely because of that, they are forgettable. Do you want to be remembered? Then stop avoiding tension. Create it masterfully. Not rudely, but strategically. Start with small gestures. Hold the silence instead of correcting it with a joke. Hold the gaze instead of looking away. Let the other person wonder what you're thinking. Challenge a sentence with another perspective, not to win the argument, but to show that you're thinking. This creates friction. It generates curiosity. It keeps the other person's mind alert. Here's an uncomfortable truth. People only think of you after interacting with you if you broke a pattern. If you gave their brain a reason to revisit that experience, and the brain revisits what was emotionally intense, what activated their senses, what broke the monotony. And here's the paradox. To be remembered as trustworthy, you must first be felt as undeniably present. And presence isn't born from comfort. Presence is born from well-calibrated tension. That's why figures like James Bond, Harvey Specter, or Thomas Shelby fascinate us so much. They don't ask permission to exist. They challenge, they hold our gaze, they say what they think, and in doing so they awaken a visceral reaction in us. Who is this guy? This question is the gateway to desire. It's the spark of magnetism, and this question only arises when there is tension. But be careful, tension isn't aggression, it's not blind confrontation. It's a game of contrasts. It's showing that you can be gentle but also firm, that you can listen but also take a stand, that you can smile but also remain silent with intensity. It's like dancing on the edge of audacity, without ever falling into arrogance. And human beings, deep down, crave risk, emotional risk, the risk of the unknown, the risk of feeling something real. And those who avoid tension for fear of rejection are actually avoiding living, avoiding feeling, avoiding being. Do you want to be remembered? Do you want to be desired? Do you want to be someone who walks into a room and changes its emotional temperature? Then embrace tension. Use it as a tool for differentiation. Master your presence to the point where you don't need to ask for space. You'll be noticed because your energy breaks the inertia of the environment. You'll be remembered because your speech doesn't seek comfort, it seeks truth. Practice this in doses. Start by disagreeing gracefully. Use phrases like, "I understand your point, but have you considered the opposite?" Or, "That's interesting, but my experience was exactly the opposite." Observe how the room reacts, how eyes turn, how attention levels rise. This is social tension in action. Apply this also to touching, pausing, and timing. Speak an impactful sentence and let the silence do the work for you. Don't fill the gaps, stretch them. Make the other person want to fill them with questions, with curiosity, with attention. The social game is an invisible theater, and tension is what keeps the audience on the edge of their seat. And here's the final point. A point that unites everything we've discussed so far. Silence, self-worth, tension. These are not isolated techniques. They are different expressions of the same root, self-knowledge. Those who know themselves sustain silence. Those who know themselves build real value. Those who know themselves are not afraid of tension, because they know they won't be destroyed by it. Those who know themselves live with intention, with intensity, with direction. So the real question isn't how to be more charismatic. The real question is, do you know yourself well enough to sustain your own presence? And if the answer is not yet, then the work begins now. Because the social game, the game of attraction, the game of influence, isn't won with ready-made phrases. It's earned through who you become when no one's looking. It's earned through the choices you make when you're alone, through what you read, through what you avoid, through what you face, and most of all, through how much you're willing to refine yourself. This is the path of those who no longer want to demand attention, but rather to attract it. This is the path of those who don't want to be remembered as cool, but as unforgettable. And this is the path of those who understand that seduction isn't about conquering the other. It's about conquering yourself, on a level so deep that the world has no choice but to pay attention.